Hi everyone, my name's Britton Cline, Ad Sales Manager, and welcome to this week's edition of Marketing Minutes by Scuba Diving Industry Magazine.
And I'm William Cline, publisher. And if you're a company out there and you've got something you'd like to tell the industry, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on this show.
That's right.
So, Britton, who do we have with us today?
Yes, so today we have our own two-time cover shot and contributor, Marty Snyderman, talking about his polar trips, his photo work at the amazing Atlantis Resorts and Liveaboards in the Philippines. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I'm really glad to be here. I think this will be fun.
Well, we're glad to have you today, Marty. Britton, he is our only guest we've had on twice on Marketing Minutes.
That's
in
right.
over 100 episodes. So you're the first one and only the second photographer to have two covers of all of our magazines. So double shot,
very
well
cool.
done on both regards. So I can't wait to jump to the day show.
Absolutely. But to dive right into things, Marty, I hear a little bit from my dad that you and he kicked around some of the same circles growing up back in Southern California, dive shops. Could you tell our audience a little bit about your history and how you got started in diving and maybe how you got to specialize in shooting underwater images, specifically animals?
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
That's a bunch of questions. Yeah.
So the deal is, I got lucky as a kid.
Mm.
When I figured out I was not going to be a shortstop for the Milwaukee Braves, I wanted to be the next Jacques Cousteau.
Totally.
And I had an uncle. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. Had an uncle that was the Sears and Roebuck, which probably a bunch of listeners haven't heard of, but it was a rather large department store around the country. He was the Sears and Roebuck Arkansas sportsman. And he used to take celebrities hunting and fishing, and he'd let me tag along. And wilderness just got in my blood from that.
Wow.
And from the time I was, 12 or 13, I was headed to the ocean. I just didn't know how to get there from Little Rock. And went to college occasionally. I went to Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee, and Stan Waterman came and spoke one night. I knew who he was.
Wow.
And I went out uninvited, me. I jumped in a car with a bunch of Vanderbilt suits, and Stan, after his presentation, I'm sure I was in t-shirt and shorts. All these guys were dressed up. I didn't have a dime. And I went to dinner with these guys. I don't know who paid for my dinner. I knew I couldn't. And I just sat and listened to his stories. And I was so scared that I was going to have to pay for something on the way home. I walked back to campus that night.
Wow.
But I knew what I wanted to do. And what I learned that night, other than that Stan was an amazing human being, is that you didn't have to have the French Navy to go make a film underwater. It'd been all Jacques Cousteau prior to that. But
Right.
Here was just a guy, not just your average guy, but a guy who wanted to do what I wanted to do. And he kind of showed me the way, metaphorically anyhow. And then after college, I went to work on sailboats in the Caribbean that I learned were a little bit unsafe. And so I ended up going out to San Diego and went through the NASDS Diving Instructors College in 1975. I was still too broke to go home or go anywhere. But I landed a job at the San Diego Diving Locker, which was owned by Chuck Nicklin. Hopefully some people know Chuck's name.
Very
He
famous.
was a filmmaker. He was shooting Hollywood films and documentaries. And this is kind of crazy that 6 people who were either clients there or on staff have received Nogi Awards. The Nogi is kind of there's a very nice award to receive in the diving world, but we're having 6 of us at one dive shop.
That's amazing.
I was at Scuba University, and I glommed onto everything. I just tried to learn. You could say I died and gone to heaven. I was on the poor side of heaven, but I was there, and then I got assigned. I was an instructor in theory, anyhow, but you had to learn the diving locker way, not just the NASDS way. And the guy I got assigned to was Howard Hall.
Oh my gosh.
Howard was working there, and Howard and I became fast friends and have remained friends for life. And I live 5 minutes away, and we see each other all the time. And
Wow.
so that was kind of my diving history. And Howard and I started diving out in open ocean a long time before that was very popular. And we went out and started baiting in the ocean in Southern California. And you learn at first, if you don't take bait, that what you learn is the ocean's blue.
Right.
Um,
That's a good point.
if you take if you take some bait, you may attract some animals. And we got into filming blue sharks and mako sharks and whatever else would swim by, ocean
So cool.
sunfish and whatever. And somehow the word got out. Peter Benchley had written Jaws. We were taking pictures of sharks, and people, Hollywood, started to call us, and we started shooting films. It's kind of a crazy story. And so when younger people today, I'm 76, when younger people today ask me, how do I do what you did? The answer is, I don't know.
Right.
It's not that I don't want to tell people. I'd love to share it, but I think, like a lot of people in diving, my path was a bit convoluted.
Hmm.
In this profession, you don't go from A to B to C down to Z. You go from A to O to H to S to wherever life takes you, or wherever you can kick a door open.
Totally.
So I hope that kind of answers the question. I guess as far as photographing animals goes, I was, from my uncle and from my experience hunting and fishing and just liking nature as a kid, animal behavior is my thing. And some people love to explore caves or shipwrecks or go shoot fish. I don't care if it's nudibranchs or whales. What floats my boat is seeing and trying to document and share animal behavior.
Totally.
That's amazing. How, and this is not on our kind of our questions, but how did growing up in Southern California and learning to shoot in those challenging conditions? You have a lot of turbidity in the water there. You have, you have great clear days in the winter when it's very, very cold, of course. Talk a little bit how that really helped you as a photographer. Did it help you learn composition, how to deal with issues like that?
You know, one of the things I can tell you is, if you can make images in California, and especially back in the film days, you could make them anywhere. And that would be true of other areas, the Pacific Northwest and New England, just because of the conditions are tougher. And we were shooting film, so you had 36 tries. The one of the things that helped me the most was that I was at Scuba University and Film University working at the diving locker. Chuck Nicklin, Flip Nicklin, Howard, me, Michelle Hall, and a whole bunch of other people there were seriously into underwater photography. And it would have been shocking to go to work for a day and not have a long discussion somewhere about photography. And then we dived. I mean, I spent my money on camera gear. And honestly, I had camera gear before I had box springs for a mattress. Uh, I knew what I wanted to do.
True
And,
dive
and
pro.
Yeah.
I was into it. And so it was a matter in those days, you shot film, you got it back, you took it to a lab, and you tried to go look at it and remember what you did, and then modify it. What I will say this: when I go back and look at those images that I got published in the early days, a lot of them are just shockingly bad and of poor quality, but they were better than those made by the previous generation. So I was kind of on the, we
Mhm.
were on the shoulders of Jack McKinney and Stan Waterman and Chuck Nicklin and Al Giddings. And we had better equipment and knew more and learned from their mistakes as well as our own. So how do you get there? There's no question that, that all those folks, Ron and Val Taylor, whoever, Ron Church, were part of what helped me get to where I got to.
Amazing. That's amazing. The talent that came out of that one shop. So, we were both working at dive shops at the same time, but about 50 to 60 miles apart. I was in Orange County and you were down
No way.
in San Diego County. So it's quite amazing. So very related to this, you been to both poles, North and South Pole. And for those that aren't familiar with the various areas, including me, which has been in the industry my whole life, I couldn't tell you where in the world to go in the North Pole or South Pole, even how to get there, other than out of go south of Argentina and keep going. And same for Alaska North. We have a map up here for those that aren't familiar. Would you walk us kind of through the different areas you were and where you left from in both your North Pole trip and your South
Yeah,
Pole trip?
sure. And I don't consider myself a polar expert, but man, it was just, they both were just fantastic trips. So we started our trip out of Oslo, out of Norway at a place called Longyearbyen, went from Oslo to Longyearbyen and say caught a boat. It's a 297-foot long boat run by Ocean Wide. I'd never been on ships that size.
Wow.
And we dived Norway and then went to Greenland. And then I went and extended and went back to Iceland. So that was kind of the route. And I got familiar with the geography to some extent as best I could before the trip. But you learn as you go. And a lot of that, when you say you go from place to place, you're in open ocean. And I can see some of these images, going by, and there's just there are places where you're just in either open water or in what's called pancake ice, and you're just in these flat sheets of ice for as far as you can see. And when conditions are great, flat seas, sunny days, it's the most inviting, alluring place you can imagine. You just feel so lucky. And then it gets foggy or rainy and a little bumpy, and you realize you are so far from anywhere. You just want your mother,
Yeah.
and even though you're on a 300-foot ship with a very experienced crew, it's so remote, and that part of it to me is part of the magic. On the other end of the world, going to the South Pole, we went from the community where we boarded our boat is called Ushuaia in Argentina, and that's where most people go from, I think, that go to Antarctica, and we headed straight to the Southern Ocean. We were headed to the Weddell Sea, which is on part of Antarctica, but it was iced in, and we had to change our plans. And we had to change our plans a bunch in the Arctic. And one of the things you learn as a first timer and maybe any timer is there's the plan you make, and then there's what you really are able to do. And it is so, we've all gotten on boats, and it's conditions dependent, weather allowing, whatever. Nothing like at the poles.
Wow.
You've probably never been anywhere else where you're iced in and had to change your location by several hundred miles.
Right.
If the wind comes up, you've got to hide when you're someplace in open sea if you're going to give your people an opportunity to do anything. So
amazing.
Wow. Very, very cool. So I have a bit of a two-part question on this one. I'm sure a lot of others, watching or listening might also have. Could you tell us the difference between Arctic or Antarctic trips, especially as it relates to in-water photo opportunities?
You told me you were going to ask this, and so flippantly, I've been trying not to say, well, you go north to the Arctic and south to the Antarctic.
Right.
But what's different? You've got polar bears and walrus in the Arctic. You've got penguins in the Antarctic, but you also have leopard seals and a bunch of other types of seals. We saw on our particular trip. I mean, my experience is one trip, for 8 or 10 days to each pole, so it doesn't make me an expert. We, on our trip, saw far more wildlife topside and underwater in Antarctica. I don't think that's always true, but the megafauna, the walrus and the polar bears, you're not likely to get in the water with them. If you do, it's an accident.
Yeah, totally.
Certainly professionals that have done it, but I wouldn't qualify to do that. A lot of these, I think more of these images are from Antarctica, where where penguins were around a lot, and you see them topside, you see them underwater. This happens to be from the Arctic. A lot of the Arctic animals that we saw were more invertebrates,
Hmm.
great color. Um, so it just, but I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of luck of the draw. What are the conditions during your trip, and what locations can you get to? And that kind of has more to do with what you might see than maybe whatever your plans are.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
then my second part, what three things would you suggest a first time pole adventurer do or have for the trip?
Good question.
So I'm going to say the first thing is listen and read. I think a lot of us have gotten a little complacent, and we kind of go, yeah, I'm going on this trip. I'll take a look at it on the flight and see what I'm
Totally.
supposed to do.
Hmm.
Polar diving requires
Hmm.
planning, getting the right equipment, and not just getting it, but practicing with it. And I'll
Right.
just give you an example. Like you wear dry gloves, and your hands are going to be one of the first things that go.
Mhm.
And if your hands don't work, you don't work. You
Mhm.
can't get back in the boat. You can't get your gear off by yourself, and that may happen anyhow. But you're not going to manipulate a camera system. So I had dry gloves, and then my gloves were heated. There's a little wiring
Mm.
system that you use, but how to set that up and how not to make mistakes takes practice. And then I sat for I don't know, maybe a month before I went. My camera system was totally assembled on my living room table, and I would put my dry gloves on with the garments that go underneath that, and try to manipulate the controls on my camera
Wow.
system. And it takes practice. You lose
Mm.
dexterity, you don't have the feel. And I thought I had all that wired. And then I did some practice dives in Southern California. And the first thing I learned is I had some strobes that with my dry gloves, I couldn't turn the strobes on and off. I
Right.
couldn't get to the switches. So I had to put a little weight lock. I tied a weight lock onto my strobes, and I could use it to get the leverage to manipulate the switches. So you need not only to read, and you really need to practice with this stuff and take it diving and be comfortable. The polar waters, you're going to get an education, but it's not the place to get a basic education about your equipment. You
Well,
you want to have used it.
So true. Very true.
that's
Awesome
great.
Um,
That's
advice.
great advice. Fantastic advice.
Also, I used a heated vest, and that takes an external battery, and it's heavy. And then you got to figure out how you're going to travel with all that. But again, it's all a matter of really doing the things the trip leaders tell you to do.
Totally.
That's fantastic. So let's switch gears a little bit because you obviously have a shirt on that says Atlantis. So I know you work with them, you represent them. You recently were in town for an event that you and I got together a little bit and chatted. But can you tell other retailers out there why they should consider Atlantis Resorts, because there's more than one, and Liveaboard in the Philippines for group trips, and how to get in touch with you to request a virtual presentation to their customers? Maybe start
Yeah,
with
yeah.
where the resorts are located.
Thanks for that. And it's a pure accident that I'm wearing an Atlanta shirt. Um, so we have two land-based resorts and two liveaboards. And so for starters, the Philippines are located about 600 miles east of Vietnam, north of Malaysia and Indonesia. A lot of people, for whatever reason, tend to think the Philippines are south of the equator, but Manila's about 14 and a half degrees north.
Hmm.
And then the Philippines are an island nation. At high tide, there's about 7,100 islands. At low tide, about 7,600. There's no real
Wow.
definition of an island, which is kind of an interesting thing. So where are we? You can see Manila is starred. That's the capital, and that's where you would land. And then if you look slightly to the left and below, you'll see a little black dot that says Porto Galera, and that's where one of our land-based resorts is. And then down there, if you go on down the chain a little bit, you'll see the word Negros, Negros,
Yeah.
in black on Cebu or close to Cebu, and that's where Dumaguete is. So those are the two land-based resorts. As a rule, the liveaboards leave out of the Dumaguete resort, but that's not true all year round for every trip.
Wow.
Interesting.
Very, very cool.
And I guess you said, why should we come? So here's, or why should someone come to Atlantis? And I would say it this way. I dived in a lot of cold water, and for all my life, I thought, boy, it sure be nice to have an affiliation with a warm water destination. And just by happenstance and good fortune, I ran into Gordon Strahan, one of our owners at DEMA, at a DEMA show years ago. And he invited me to come as a guest, and I learned what Atlantis is all about. And the truth is, maybe everybody says this and maybe everybody thinks this, but I am proud to represent Atlantis. We've got a great program for divers. We offer 4 dives every day, plus either a Mandarin fish dive or a night dive every night. If one person wants to go, we're going to take you. There's no such thing as having to get 3 people from Oshkosh to get on the boat so you can go.
Awesome.
If one person wants to go, we're going.
That's great.
The diving starts relatively shallow in so many locations that it's easy and safe to do that number of dives. I've made trips where I never went below 80 feet.
Sure.
I've did a lot of photography in 10 to 25 feet of water. So there's just there and why should you come? In the Caribbean, which I love to dive in the Caribbean, there's about 750 species of fish. In the Coral Triangle, which is where the Philippines and Atlantis, we're about 2,250 species.
Incredible.
You're not going to see them all, but you have the same variety in invertebrates. 600 of the world's 800 reef-building hard corals can be found in the Coral Triangle. So the variety is spectacular. In addition to all to the diving, we do everything we can to make your life easy. You don't need to leave the resorts other than to go diving. In other words, we've got an on-site restaurant. The chefs are culinary trained. There's a spa on the restaurant or the resort. But our whole thing is get you in the water, make it easy, have guides that are going to make sure you have a great experience and not waste time going into town or doing other things. We consider ourselves to be a 5-star diving dedicated resort. And I don't really ever want to stay in a 5-star hotel, but a 5-star diving program is a different label. And it's everything that we can do to make things easy and comfortable. We've got great camera rooms, so you're not lugging camera gear back and forth, from the ocean to your room to change batteries or media cards or whatever. And the staging area is very close to where we do a briefing and then walk a short distance onto the boat. So it's all about
awesome
convenience and just a lot of marine life.
That's amazing. So if you're a dive shop out there and you're looking for a group location, reach out to Marty. His contact information is going to be in the comments for this video. Atlanta sounds like a place we should be doing an on-the-road show, huh, Britton?
Absolutely.
It's really quite remarkable. So who do we got stacked up for our next show?
That's right. So our next guest will be Karen Mullet, owner of Scuba Zone and the Sassy Mermaid in Barberton, Ohio. So stay tuned for that. It should make for an awesome conversation.
Yeah, I love this retailer to retailer series that we're doing. It's fabulous.
Very fun.
So Marty, last parting comments before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'd say thanks for having me. And I think, honestly, I think what you guys are doing with the magazine is really good for the industry, and really, there's great information in there. And I wasn't so sure when you guys launched it that we'd have an opportunity like this. But I'd say kudos to you guys. You guys are making a mark, and I think that's cool, and the industry needs it.
Well, we appreciate that.
Marty.
It's only possible through support, so we appreciate all your support. So I guess we'll see you in Long Beach in a couple of months. We're going to be there with the booth. We're going to be beneath the sea and just at the end of this month. If you happen to be there, stop by and see us, booth 202.
That's right.
But otherwise, I think that's going to wrap us up for today, Britton.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks again. And you can always see everything all the shows at scubadivingindustry.com and subscribe for free.
That's right.
Look for a February issue out, March issue out March 30th.
All right.